What's up, Bengals Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bengals Breakdown, where we dig deep into everything orange and black. I'm your host, and today we're diving into some heated trade rumors surrounding our Cincinnati Bengals, because the NFL trade deadline is closing in fast, just about 2 weeks away. Now here's the question every fan's asking: will the Bengals be buyers trying to make a playoff push, or sellers ready to reset? Right now, the team sits at 3-4, still holding second place in the AFC North, just a game and a half behind Pittsburgh. So yes, the door to the postseason is wide open, but it won't stay open forever. Before we get into the latest Bengals news, make sure to subscribe to the channel, drop a like, and hit that bell icon, because you don't want to miss a single Bengals update as we roll into this crucial part of the season. Alright, let's get back into it. Now, with Joe Flacco under center, it's clear the offense is doing just enough to stay in games. But the real question? Can the defense step up and carry this team forward over the next few weeks? Because that's what's going to decide everything, whether Cincinnati starts chasing talent before the deadline, or stays quiet and lets the roster ride. Looking at the schedule, there are some matchups that could completely shift the season's direction. Up next are the Jets, and let's be honest, that's a very winnable game. They've struggled badly, and while they'll fight hard for that first win, the Bengals can't afford to play down to their level. Then there's the Bears, who've been hot lately with 4 straight wins, but none of those came against top-tier teams. It's a test, but still a chance for Cincinnati to prove it's better than the record shows. After that, the bye week comes at the perfect time, a chance to regroup before heading on the road for another AFC North showdown with the Steelers. And we all know, it's tough to beat a divisional rival twice in 1 year. But if there's any team that can do it, it's these Bengals when they're playing their best football. And don't forget, the Patriots are lurking too. They've looked solid recently, especially after that upset over the Bills, but this stretch will truly show what the Bengals are made of. Now, the Patriots have been all over the place this season, some strong wins, some frustrating losses, and honestly, it's hard to know what kind of team they really are. But for Cincinnati, that doesn't matter. What matters is momentum. If the Bengals can carry the energy from their last couple of performances, there's a real chance they shift from being trade sellers to confident buyers at the deadline. That decision will define how serious this front office is about making a push this year. But let's talk about the topic that's lighting up Bengals Nation: Trey Hendrickson trade rumors. And no, this didn't come from inside the team, this came straight from the national media. ESPN floated a proposal that honestly made fans everywhere stop and shake their heads. According to that report, the Bengals would send Trey Hendrickson and a 2026 fourth-round pick to the Detroit Lions in exchange for a second-rounder. On paper, it might look like a simple value trade, but in reality, it's not that simple. Hendrickson isn't just another defensive piece. He's one of the emotional anchors of this defense. The guy plays with intensity, sets the tone every snap, and leads by example. Trading him now, when the Bengals still have life in the playoff hunt, would feel like waving a white flag. It would send the wrong message to the locker room, especially to a defense that's finally starting to build rhythm again. Now sure, if things spiral, if the Bengals somehow fall flat against the Jets or lose back-to-back games, maybe the front office has to reevaluate. But right now, that's not the mindset. This team still believes it can turn this around. And that belief? It starts with leaders like Trey Hendrickson staying right where they belong, in orange and black. Now let's dig deeper into what's really happening behind the scenes with these trade rumors, especially when it comes to Trey Hendrickson's value. From everything we're hearing, it sounds like the Bengals front office has set a high price for Hendrickson, and honestly, they should. Teams like the Colts, who were once linked to these talks, weren't willing to meet Cincinnati's asking price. Reports suggest the Bengals were looking for something big, maybe a first-round pick or a first plus a starter-level player in return. But most teams simply weren't ready to pay that. That tells you something important: the Bengals aren't desperate to move Hendrickson. They know what he's worth. The market might only be offering second-round value, but Cincinnati clearly sees him as much more than that. They're not going to give up one of their defensive leaders for anything less than top-tier compensation. And that's the right move. Because right now, the message should be stability, not surrender. This team is trying to climb back into playoff position, not strip down for draft capital. trading Hendrickson would only make sense if someone offered a package too good to ignore, and so far, no one has. Now, there's been another name floating around, Carl Granderson from the Saints. He's a talented edge rusher with solid production this season. On paper, he could add depth behind guys like Joseph Ossai, Myles Murphy, and rookie Shamar Stewart, but the numbers make things tricky. Granderson's contract jumps from around $6.5 million this year to $18 million next season, and that kind of cap hit doesn't fit what Cincinnati usually does. So unless the Saints were willing to eat some of that salary, it's hard to imagine the Bengals pulling that trigger. This team values flexibility, and right now, they'd rather develop the young edge talent already in the building than spend big on another pass rusher. Bottom line, don't expect Cincinnati to make a panic move. The Bengals are listening, but they're not selling. When you look at the numbers, things start to get interesting. Carl Granderson's cap hit rises sharply, nearly $18 million in each of the next 2 seasons, which puts him in that same salary range the Bengals were considering with Grover Stewart, whose deal would have been around $14 million through 2026. Now, the real mystery is what happens next with Trey Hendrickson. After this season, Cincinnati faces a big decision. They could choose to extend, tag and trade, or possibly let him walk. It all depends on how the next few months play out. At the same time, Joseph Ossai and Kemp Sample are both heading toward free agency after this year, which means the Bengals have some crucial calls to make on the edge rush group. That's where a player like Granderson could make sense. If the Bengals were to acquire him, they'd have him under contract through 2027, long-term security at a position that could soon face turnover. Compared to Hendrickson's current cap number, Granderson would actually be a more affordable option moving forward, giving Cincinnati some breathing room while still keeping production on the field. But let's be real, none of this happens in a vacuum. Every move the Bengals make from this point on will send a signal about their vision. Are they building around the veteran core, trusting Hendrickson and the current lineup to make another playoff run? Or are they quietly preparing for a shift toward younger talent like Myles Murphy and Shamar Stewart for the future? Either way, one thing's clear, the Bengals are sitting at a crossroads. These next few weeks, both on the field and in the front office, will reveal exactly what kind of team this is. Are they fighting for now, or planning for next? We'll find out soon enough. Now shifting gears, another name that's been tossed into the trade conversation lately is Cam Taylor-Britt, and this one has definitely split opinions across Bengals Nation. Some fans think the team should hold on to him because of the cornerback depth, while others believe it might be time to explore his trade value before the deadline. Here's the reality. Cam Taylor-Britt has had flashes of promise, but overall, his consistency has been an issue. The Bengals secondary has struggled with big plays and coverage breakdowns, and unfortunately, Taylor-Britt has been part of that frustration. ESPN recently suggested a hypothetical deal that caught some attention: Cam Taylor-Britt to the Washington Commanders in exchange for Noah Igbinoghene and a 2026 7th-round pick. On paper, it's not a blockbuster. Igbinoghene himself hasn't had much playing time this season, and his fit in the Bengals defense would be questionable at best. He's been moved around by previous teams, used outside in Dallas and Miami, then shifted into the slot with Washington. So even if the Bengals made that move, it wouldn't necessarily be an upgrade. It would simply be a reset. Financially, it's also a decision point. Taylor-Britt is entering the final year of his rookie contract, set to make around $2.4 million, and the front office has to decide whether he's part of the long-term plan or not. If they believe his development has plateaued, trading him now could open the door for younger talent or for adding a corner who better fits Lou Anarumo's defensive scheme. But let's be clear, trading away a cornerback during a playoff push is risky business. Depth at that position is everything in this league, especially with how injuries pile up late in the season. If Cincinnati wants to keep their postseason hopes alive, they'll need every capable defensive back they've got. The front office has 2 weeks to decide: stand pat and trust the roster, or make a bold move that could shake up the defense for the stretch run. Either way, the clock is ticking in Cincinnati. ESPN's report painted the proposed Cam Taylor-Britt trade as a fresh start scenario, a chance for him to reboot his career with a defense that's been struggling just as much as he has. The idea was that Washington could use him as an outside reserve corner, given that their secondary has been giving up more yards per drop back without pressure than any team in the league this year. On the other side of that trade would be Noah Igbinoghene, who's had a tough time finding steady playing time. Once a first-round pick in Miami, he's bounced between teams, barely seeing the field this season in Washington. He's taken just a handful of defensive snaps, mostly playing on special teams, and has around $780,000 left on his deal before becoming a free agent. In short, there's not a lot of upside left there unless a team truly believes it can spark something new in him. That's why, from a Bengals perspective, this trade doesn't make a ton of sense. Sure, Taylor-Britt hasn't lived up to expectations so far. He's struggled in coverage, allowed too many completions, and was even a healthy scratch recently. But trading him for another improving corner and a late-round pick? That doesn't move the needle. The Bengals' defense already faces enough challenges in the secondary, and giving up a young corner for someone who might not even fit the scheme would be a lateral move at best. If Cincinnati decides to move on from Taylor-Britt, it should be for a player who can immediately contribute, not just fill a roster spot. At the end of the day, both players are fighting to prove they belong in this league. But for the Bengals, the smarter play might be holding on to their guy a little longer, especially with the depth concerns they already have. Because right now, in a season that still hangs in the balance, every roster decision, even one involving a backup corner, matters.